in building all of this and starting Nova, you must also have to jump through a lot of visa hoops.
How would you know?
and I know your story is more interesting than a lot of other people. So why don't you just like tell us, how did the going from, you were on F1? How did that journey?
So I was in an F1 for grad school. I then did an OPT for the year after, so I had a 1-year OPT. I was lucky. So Misha, we have 3 co-founders. Misha has US citizenship, so that made things a little bit simpler there. And then Luke, who's our CTO, he had studied mathematics.
So he's a STEM major.
So he's a STEM major, so he has the 3-year OPT, so he is chilling. But yeah, so I remember when we were like talking about like company formation, all of that, how would we de-risk it, and it's actually, you know, part of the reason we decided to even do something like YC and things like that was also just we heard that it helps. You need a lot of signaling for your visas and support, and so we did that path. Anyway, so about a year in, as my OPT was expiring, I applied for an H1B. I got rejected in the lottery, and I applied for an O1 and actually got it approved. O1 is the visa, which is the like extraordinary abilities one, although I think it's issued to about 50,000 people a year, is it?
Yeah, I think it's increasing now as more people get to know about it, and it has gotten difficult compared to the last 2 years.
No, for sure. There's a lot of statistics around that, but it's so I applied for that. I got it approved after a fair amount of work on it, which was great. And then I went back home to London for my best friend's wedding, and I was there for about 3.5 months, a week, and it was a little bit of a surreal experience. So I had it approved. I went for my consular interview, and unfortunately they decided to reject it then, which is somewhat unusual. I think the consular interview is typically just a verification that you haven't committed fraud, not the application itself. So it was unusual. And then
so it was basically you wanted to get it stamped on your passport.
Yeah. And then it was in this weird limbo for a while where the status was being reviewed for a while, then it got rejected. And you know, throughout that period where you're waiting for review, unfortunately, the only email you can write to is like no reply at like DHS.gov or whatever. So it's quite a stressful period. And then eventually got rejected, which was worse. And then I applied for another O1. I got it approved again. Then run into some issues because I bolstered my application to try and address any of the reasons it might have been rejected. So then I got it approved again, and then the consulates wasn't sure if they could approve it because I'd had the previous rejection. So then I was in limbo for another period, and then finally it got approved. So I was extremely fortunate with the outcome, and fortunate to have like our investors were extraordinarily supportive, and you know, wrote to millions of lawyers and supporters and trying to help me. And so I had a small army, which was extremely lucky. But it was a really scary experience because I had a partner in the US, I had an apartment that I was paying rent in, I had a company in the US, and I couldn't enter the country legally. And the scariest part was that it's not like someone said to me, "Oh, Nikki, you're going to be in London for the next 3 months." Like, it was like, maybe next week, maybe forever. Who knows if you're coming in? Who knows if you're not coming in? I remember at one point my now fiance and I were like, well, shall we get married next weekend? Like, you know, so you start, but it was, I think I felt very disempowered, and it was a weird period. So I was sort of working California hours, living at my parents', like sleeping during the day, awake during the night. I was extraordinarily grumpy because of all of that combination. And so I was like, it's like I'd regressed to being a teenager. And at times I was like, did I make all of this up in my head? Is my Silicon Valley life real?